Welcome back. I'm Brandon, the HBAR Bull, once again joined by Zepsi. Now, we both do some contract work for the HBAR Foundation, but we don't do these weekly updates in any official capacity. We're just coming to you personally to give you the latest in the Hedera ecosystem. Welcome back, Zep.
How's it going, Brandon?
It's going really good, but as always, none of this is financial advice. Use it for entertainment or educational purposes only. So the first thing that I want to jump into is something that was highlighted by some community members. I'm going to give them a huge shout out here in a little bit. But the reason why I want to cover it is because the implications are so huge, and there's real connections here. It's not associated with a press release or anything like that. It is putting some breadcrumbs together, but it is substantive. So what it's around is the Depository Trust Clearing Corporation, or DTCC. And if you're in the financial industry, you know exactly what we're talking about. But if you're not, you might have absolutely no clue that this is the backbone of our equity markets, of our stock markets. And just to give you some context here, they manage about 1.5 million active securities, and that's valued at over $100 trillion. Now, you hear the number $100 trillion. We're talking about essentially the entire world stock market, or pretty darn close. And now that's in the United States and 130 different countries around the world. But again, you might not have heard of this DTCC in the past. But if you have a stock and you don't hold the certificate, and who does actually hold the certificates nowadays, then that stock is actually maintained by this DTCC. So it's absolutely enormous. It's completely at the core of our financial system. So what was highlighted, and I've seen some discussions around Hedera and the DTCC in the past, but there was a Reddit post that really put it all together. And huge shout out to Serjam K, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right, who put this together, because he did, or she did, a fantastic job at doing it. So in the post, he starts off by saying, the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation, DTCC, is a leading post-trade market infrastructure for the global financial services industry. And he gave another metric that I thought was pretty interesting, and he highlighted it saying, DTCC processes over 2.5 quadrillion worth of securities every year. And this is where things get interesting. He says, in October of 2023, DTCC acquired Securrency, a digital and financial technology company focused on tokenizing issuance and trading of securities. Through this acquisition, DTCC formalizes its current DLT pilot initiatives and is expected to deliver an institutional post-trade platform that supports most digital asset products, including existing securities wrapped in a digital structure and digitally native on-chain assets. So now we're going to dig into how Securrency is tied to Hedera. We're going to start with Virtual Power Exchange. So now you might have seen on the HBAR Foundation website, Securrency mentioned in a blog post, and it's entitled The Virtual Powers Exchange, a Boss Controls and Securrency joint venture to bring on-demand secure renewable energy on Hedera. So as we've talked about in the past, how the Sustainable Impact Fund is well ahead of other networks in carbon markets, in sustainability markets, and so forth. So here's an example of that, and it's tied to this Securrency company that was just acquired by DTCC. Next up, we have OpenCrowd and Securrency. OpenCrowd is a blockchain company who specializes in blockchain solutions. They are heavily integrated with Hedera Hashgraph and have built the Dragonglass Ledger/Explorer. And they're also, of course, the team behind Drop Micropayments. And we saw them highlighted by FedNow just several months ago. OpenCrowd has been long-term partners of Securrency who utilize OpenCrowd's custom blockchain business solutions to extend their platform across a number of new ledgers. This enables Securrency's regulatory compliance engine to support tokenization and trading of securities across DLTs. Securrency's former CEO and CTO, Dan Doney, now the DTCC CTO of digital assets, also has referenced his work with Hashgraph extensively in the past. And the last thing I'm going to highlight with Securrency is them teaming up with a company called Vertalo. And this was announced a few years ago, but of course this stuff's always working behind the scenes. And the CEO of Vertalo said, Hedera Hashgraph represents the kind of technology that Vertalo and the markets require to deliver a trusted solution for a growing global client base. As more assets move from centralized databases and spreadsheets to distributed ledgers, the underlying infrastructure needs to scale along with it. Vertalo has chosen to build on Hedera Hashgraph because we require technology that can not only process at higher rates than earlier DLTs, but that also comes with an improved governance model that reflects our values and those of our clients. So, Zeb, we don't know what's going to come from this acquisition, the acquisition of Securrency by this DTCC. But what I like about it is it shows that there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes. And then just one day, just like what we saw with Atmio, just one day it hits the market. What we saw with Drop with FedNow, and then those things kind of go, but behind the scenes again until we remember it when another announcement comes out. So I'm just going to follow this closely. Of course, there's nothing too official here. There's real connections, but there's no official announcement around what they're actually building. But again, kudos to the community for digging this stuff up, because I do think it's interesting. All right, so we are going to shift gears here a little bit. We're going to get into Karate Combat. We just had another super successful event, and we're continuing to see that exponential rise in active users. So I caught up with Only LARPing. He is one of the founders of Karate Combat to give us some more details. So the last time we spoke was after the first kickback event, and we were discussing how impressed we were with the unique players that had increased from about 11,000 unique players up to about 29,000 accounts. And since then, we've had 2 additional events. How have the usage metrics progressed in those past couple months?
Yeah, Up Only Gaming continues to really perform. We've seen player growth all the way up to 62,000 players at this past event, like up 40 and 50% month over month for the last 2 events. The amount of karate played continues to grow, and that's definitely tougher than it looks because about 25% of the float is now playing. And that's an active participation, right? And I think it compares very favorably to passive participation rates on a number of L1 networks, many of which have been, had staking in place for much longer than Up Only Gaming has been around. So we're really pleased with that as well. The retention continues to shine. I was just running the numbers. It looks really good. That was sort of the big risk out of the gates because these events are only once a month. We sort of broke every cardinal rule of building a mobile app. You're supposed to build something you use every single day. Up Only Gaming, you play like once a month, but it looks really good.
Yeah, but you do have, votes in between on different rule
Sure.
changes. You can go and check your players, especially leading up to these events. I'm going and doing my research on the players and switching things back and forth. So it's not like it's just a once every 4 weeks. You are in that app a little bit more often.
Well, that's good to hear. I know I am, but it's glad to hear you are as well.
Yeah, good stuff. So I think many in the Web3 space, they don't think about how projects make money outside of crypto. Can you tell us a little bit about the normal revenue streams for the Karate Combat League?
Yeah, and they're really all of them because Up Only Gaming is not monetized.
Sure.
We built this as an engagement feature to turn our really large awareness into obsessive super fans, and I think we're at least if we're counting yourself, we're really well on our way. It seems to be working. People are seeming to get obsessed with the league, which you love to see. But the revenue streams of the league are much more of the traditional revenue streams you would see for a young sports league. Sponsorship is the number one run right now, but I think growing fast and could eclipse sponsorship this year is host city fees. Working with governments that want to bring karate combat to their local geography and are willing to pay to make that happen. So that we're spending tons of time on that. Some of the results are starting to bear fruit. Partnered with Dubai to make the next event happening, very soon. One other thing that's on the horizon, and too early to say if it'll be kind of a traditional revenue stream per se, because we're looking at a lot of more crypto native ways to benefits from it. But that's licensing the tech stack that's been built out for Up Only Gaming. We're starting to get a number of players approaching the league about licensing out the tech stack. I think we need to get more aggressive with reaching out to other sports properties as well to really grow Up Only Gaming and spread it. I think there's huge benefits to spreading Up Only Gaming to other sports properties. Would love to see events every week of sports properties having Up Only Gaming enabled events. So we're working on that really hard. We're thinking about it really hard. We have our own spin-off IPs, developing here that I think, you know, could develop into their own Up Only Gaming platforms.
Well, like I've said before, it seems like you've caught lightning in a bottle with this Up Only Gaming. I do think that Karate Combat was, as you mentioned in the past, in a unique situation to do this, but I think it has certainly application across many different sports as well. But I want to touch on what you already mentioned. The next two events are going to be pretty special, both because of the locations they're going to be in. As you mentioned, the first one is going to be in Dubai next month, and that MENA region, the sports are just taking off, and I only see that continuing. I was thinking about how expensive that was going to be, but you just mentioned that that's actually a revenue driver for you, so that's exciting to hear. The one after that isn't as exotic, but it may be even more impactful because it's at one of the largest crypto events in the world, and that's Consensus down there in Austin. Can you tell us a bit about the importance of these next two events for Karate Combat?
Yeah, it's massive. Our goal, we keep saying it, but our goal is to be crypto's first sport. Crypto has finance, art, computation. It deserves a sport. That's what we want to be. And having events at two of the biggest crypto conferences in the world, 2 months in a row, you can't ask for much more than that. So we just got to execute. Over the last 2 or 3 months, we've had most of the biggest crypto conferences in the world reach out to us to try and partner. So I'm really excited to show everyone what we can do. Both of these events will have over 15,000 people at the conferences, and getting those conference attendees to Karate Combat is really the best way to show off everything we've built.
I can't believe this, but I didn't even realize that the Dubai event was around a crypto conference. Is that Token 2049? What is that event?
Yeah. So that's Token 2049 Dubai.
That's right.
Partnering with the conference as well. Same night as the Token 2049 after party. I think we'll have 1,000 crypto people at the event.
That's awesome. So I am going to be down there at Consensus, and I'm hoping to attend. Usually, I don't know how many people. Usually, they're smaller venues. Only a few hundred people or several hundred people can actually get in there. How many people are actually going to be able to fit into that event? Because, gosh, I don't know how many people are going to be at Consensus, but as I've
Yeah.
mentioned, it's going to be a pretty hot ticket. So how many people are you going to be able to get in to actually watch live?
So both the next two events are big.
Okay.
We've got a 5,000 person venue in Dubai. It's at the by the time that this airs, I think it'll be announced. It's at the Dubai Tennis Stadium.
Okay.
So that's pretty fantastic. And then Consensus is the same footprint as our Vegas event, which was about 2,000 people.
Okay. Good stuff. Exciting. Well, you guys are progressing exactly how we would like to see. The last thing that I want to ask about is how are the tokens being used across, Ethereum, across Hedera? What's the engagement with the actual app, which of course is built on Hedera?
Yeah, really, I think I am strongly convinced that the future of consumer crypto is mobile. We've built our mobile apps on Hedera, and we're seeing almost all of our players there. Like, it's got to be 99. I'd have to run the numbers, but it's got to be 99% plus are playing through the mobile apps built on Hedera.
All right, I gotcha. Well, congratulations on all the success you've had to this point. Congratulations on, I'm sure, what is going to be success at the next two events. Thanks for stopping by. We appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Zeb, I can't say how impressed I am with Karate Combat, from their product to how they're engaging with Hedera. But do you have any thoughts around what we're seeing come out of Karate Combat?
Yeah, I mean, the most exciting thing for me is the sheer amount of active users that are being driven by one single application, i.e. Karate Combat. 62,000 users, active users for a chain that, is traditionally seen as enterprise focused, really shows that there is a vibrant retail community that developers can tap into, that as well as teams and whoever else wants to, be a part of that. And what I find even more exciting is that this is prior to those large Web3 events. We've had Karate Combat now put on the map in Web3 from that influencer fight club, but we're going to be having people on the ground at Consensus with their apps that know how to use Web3, that know how to buy a token, and that really want to engage in something like this. So I think we really are at the start of that hockey stick in terms of the Web3 native users, and I think the network effects that will come from these events like Consensus in the future will be massive. And that's just the Web3 side, right? We know that Karate Combat have a pipeline of new fighters. They've got old school sort of MMA legends like Luke Rockhold and Joe Schilling at Karate Combat 45. And we know that the more attention they get, the more of these fighters are going to come in, and the more coverage they'll get in the Web 2 world as well. So I think they really are marrying those two worlds perfectly, and this is only going to get more and more growth with each event.
Yeah, and I mean they're kind of bridging a few different worlds, consumer engagement, sports, and you gotta have to bring gaming into that as well. And that's one of the main focuses you had this week was around gaming. And I want to get some of your thoughts on that. But first, let's go to one of our premier gaming teams, Legends of the Past. I caught up with Basil this past week, and he has some really exciting stuff coming out. They're continuing to build behind the scenes. So let's listen to what he has to say. Basil, how have things been progressing with the development of your game, Legends of the Past, since the last time we talked a few months ago?
Yeah, sure. Well, first, let's go back to the basics. So let me tell you a little bit more about our gameplay. What is Legends of the Past? So you'll engage in fast-paced battles featuring historical legends in dynamic environments that recreate multiple historical settings across our historyverse. Are you ready to experience more than a game? You'll embark on a journey through space, time, and history, from the Jurassic era all the way to futuristic eras like our Kawaii Blade Runner arena. Speaking about the game mechanics, you'll encounter some PvP, like player against player mechanics, and a progression system that you could find in games such as Super Smash Bros. Or traditional brawlers. But prepare also to engage in PvE, player against the environment activities, such as collecting some keys, looting some chests, gathering some gems, or battling against legendary bosses, but most importantly, opening portals. Because these portals will transport, during a game, all players in the arena into a new historical settings. And last, what are the characters of our game? Well, Legend of the Past is paying homage to the legends that shaped history, such as Cleopatra, Da Vinci, Martin Luther King, or even living legends such as Serena Williams. And each of our characters embodies, a unique archetype, and they all possess a special glitch feature. For instance, our Cleo, she embodies the fighter archetype, meaning that she possesses Muay Thai boxing skills as her glitch. And overall, more than Cleo, we have an entire roster that have a variety of legends. So you'll have access to new characters coming with unique abilities and also unique play styles. Our game features traditional, combat archetypes such as fighters like Cleo, ranged characters like distance, tanks, but also supports, and also wizards, to ensure a fun but also balanced gaming experience. Last, each of our legends, they come from detailed animation that reflect their unique archetype and playstyle. As you can see here, you can see our Cleo with her Muay Thai boxing skills deliver very powerful punches, but she also can summon some baby Egyptian mummies in the arena.
Now, Basil, this sounds amazing. I know you guys have assets that are coming out on a regular basis, and I'm always impressed. Your team is always busy. So what's the very latest when it comes to Legends of the Past?
So the very latest will be about the Clio committee. It's important for us that while we build our core project, Legend of the Past, we want our holders to understand and experience the power of being a Legend committee member. Even again, while we are developing our core project, because the ultimate utilities of our entire NFTs will be unlocked with the alpha release. But while we build, our NFTs already have utility. So 2 weeks ago, we launched our initial, experience of governance and tournaments coming with HBAR rewards on the Clio committee website. What happened is that owner of Clio, that are the member of the Clio committee, they have started to govern their committees. Recently, 2 weeks ago, they elected their first 2 champions, and their 2 champions, we did a Discord game between the 2 champions and the team of Legend of the Past. Luckily enough, the Clio champions won, and that's very important because when a Clio champion wins an event, a tournament, the champion receives a portion of the cash prize, and the remainder is distributed amongst all Clio committee members. proportional to their ownership in the committee. Think of it as shareholders of an esport team. And so, since a Clio champion won the first event, he won 1,000 HBAR, and the remaining of the cash prize, which was 4,000 overall, has been split between the different Clio holders. So if you own a Clio and if you participated in the elections, you can now very easily on our website, legendofthepast.com/login, collect your HBAR on our website.
So what do you have coming up in the near future that you think our community should know about?
I think it's a little bit of both things that I mentioned, meaning that, so I spoke about, our roster of legends that have unique combat, archetype, and, a glitch, but also a committee. So for the Web3 experience on top of it, we spoke a lot about it. We all know Clio, but now let's discover our second legend right now. Our second legend, she embodies the range archetype, as you can see, and you could have guessed with the paintball gun that she used. But more than the paintball gun that you can see here, she also summons some very cute but devastating, splashes unit on the battleground. But you know what? Let's meet her right now at the end of this following teaser. So did you recognize our second legend? What's your guess, Brendan?
I'm getting some Frida vibes. Am I on the right track?
Oh, okay. Well, we'll see very soon. Next week, you'll have the full name and you'll discover also the legend with some gameplay videos of our second legend. So very soon enough. So maybe you may have understood it. We are about to open the first seats, only the first seats of our second legend committee. And so this mint will be very exclusive and special, a bit different from what we've done in the past, very special as well. And if you've been following our project, well, you'll know that it's important for us to reward our holders, our community, our early supporters, especially the holders of our core NFTs, the Infinity Jars. But for this one, even all the jar bearers will have to fight to be sure to participate and to own one of the first seats of the second Legend Committee.
Sounds great. So can you just remind our community how they can follow you to keep up to date with everything that's going on with Legends of the Past?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can follow us on Twitter or X, through our accounts, Legend of the Past, or the Iterative Games, second account. We created another account specialized, like for the company as a studio itself, and also obviously in our Discord or through our newsletter that you can follow on our website, legendofthepast.gg, but mostly Twitter and Discord.
All right. Well, I've been having so much fun following you to this point. I can't wait to get more involved. Thank you and good luck.
Thank you so much, Brandon.
It's great to see, Baz there again, showcasing some of the gameplay because, he's one of the big builders in the ecosystem, especially in that mobile gaming side and especially in France as well. Having him at the French events, putting Hedera on the map there, I think is super, super important. But this week, we've actually been spotlighting from the foundation the burgeoning gaming ecosystem on Hedera. So what I love about the Hedera ecosystem is the real breadth of gaming that we sort of cover within Web3. We've got the sort of early play-to-earn mechanic games like Slime World, who are in the APAC, with this sort of casual game, who even this week did in one 24-hour period $104.5 million of trading volume on their NADA token on Gate.io. That's nothing to scoff at, right? That's some serious numbers for 24 hours. And that shows that, they're a team that really are penetrating that region within APAC and really building out their business model there. But then we move on to the more mature Web3 applications that moved away from that model. You've got the likes of, still within GameFi, still with their own tokens, but you've got teams like Legends of the Past, you've got teams like Astronova, who've partnered with NVIDIA, partnered with Steam and many more. We've got other teams like Earthlings who sold out their INO in minutes. And all of these teams have tokens, but they also have, a very, very strong branding behind them, really strong sort of in-game gameplay and a real dedication to making sure that the game is as fun as it is about the earning mechanic. So they're putting the gaming first, but there is that extra gamification layer, which is, really is that selling point of Web3, right? But so we've got Slime World and the play to earn. We've got the more sort of fun to earn, but, play and earn games like Legends of the Past, Astronova, Earthlings. But then we also have the real strong global IPs like BBC Studios with Doctor Who Worlds Apart, the BBC Studios licensed card trading game. We've got Play OTZ, FIFA licensed. We've got, the EA licensed Play Apex or Apex Legends, Realm Esports. And then, of course, we've got Lethos with the team, Michael and Bauer, John Garvin, who collectively between them have worked on The Last of Us, Days Gone, H1Z1 and many more games, Uncharted included. So we have that full breadth, right? And we're covering all those bases, and we never had them in the last bull run. And they've all got their own sort of token economies that they're attracting people in. And I think we've got, a really, really strong ecosystem there. And one thing I didn't actually mention within that was that we also have Neo Tokyo, right? The biggest cohort of Web3 industry investors and developers who are now part of the Hedera ecosystem, having noticed our burgeoning, ecosystem itself, who are bringing in that funding and developer support. So I think we've got the attention, we've got a strong foundation, and I'd like to see that only grow throughout this bull market and beyond.
Zep, well covered. One thing you mentioned Earthlings there. I did see a post about how one person bought $22,000 worth of their NFT all at once. I thought that was really impressive. There was a little bit of a story behind it. I guess one of our community members knew somebody who was going to make this purchase, and they wanted to buy even more, but they said leave some for everybody for everybody else. So I don't know why he would want to talk them out of it, but either way, it's just good to see that a team like Earthlings is resonating enough for somebody to take that kind of money and put into their NFTs. But Earthlings is really good about, valuing their NFT holders and their early supporters. So that's good to see. We're going to shift gears here. We're going to get into airdrops, and I'm going to start with a story around Larry Fink and BlackRock. So Larry Fink and BlackRock put together a fund around Ethereum, and they put, I think $100 million worth of Ethereum into this fund. And of course, the sleuths in the crypto ecosystem were able to identify which account that was, and they started throwing airdrops to that account. And it highlighted a few things which we're going to get into in a minute, but even they sent some Ethereum from Tornado Cash, a sanctioned entity. So not good, right? A lot of these things were not good for that thing. It's stuff that's going to get worked through. I have a story up right now from, it seems like a Bitcoin maximalist that made this sound like it's the end of the world. This is new technology, right? That there's going to be challenges like this, and BlackRock is going to figure it out. But it also highlights how, the rigor of Hedera is important for these entities like BlackRock, like DTCC, like we talked about before. Nothing bad on Solana, but 70% of their transactions are getting missed. You might be fine with having to submit 3 transactions for it to actually go through, but you don't actually have to worry about that with Hedera. A little bit later on in the show, I'm going to highlight some things that Richard Baer said in the Foundry Town Hall. And he goes through the testing and the rigor that Hedera goes through. But they also put controls around things like airdrops, understanding that Hedera was trying to cater to that highest standard, that mission critical application for these large enterprises like BlackRock. And we saw why that can become an issue. We even had Lehman put out an explanation of how Hedera addresses these things. It was also addressed in that Foundry Town Hall. It was addressed by Nana. He's one of the people at Swirlds Labs. They are talking about that HIP that we went into last week. And he covers it really well, the reasons why we have it, how they're going to address some of the issues to make these airdrops more seamless. So let's listen to what he had to say.
Can you dig into a bit more on the frictionless airdrops and what sort of the benefits are? And I guess BlackRock had a bit of a unfortunate series of events that happened with their recent Ethereum-based Yeah, with the recent Ethereum-based launch. So I guess, can you sort of give us some commentary in the context of, how Hedera might have been able to prevent or mitigate or even altogether just eliminate such classes of network behavior?
Yeah, I think I could probably tee it up and then let Nana dive into it, because Nana really drove the effort to get us across the finish line on this thing. I mean, it was like, for months and months we had talked about, well, what if we do it this way? What if we do it that way? And Nana sort of took the bull by the horns and scheduled all the meetings and got all the right people there so that we could get through it. So yeah, Nana, why don't you handle that question?
Yeah, there's a couple of contextual things I'd like to clarify. Hedera is a network, right? So as Richard said, we're trying to enable people, right? We're trying to enable developers. We're trying to enable users. This means that we have to understand multiple personas and perspectives. Hedera native services, for example, had this idea around native tokens, right? We wanted to be able to provide tokens that could transact at the speed of native transactions. So they can go as fast as crypto transfers, and they can do everything else. They do this off of the EVM. However, as a ledger, we're also EVM equivalent and compatible, meaning that all the smart contract EVM scenarios that you want to carry out can be done on Hedera. This means that we have at least two personas. One persona that says, I want to transact with native tokens that have these properties, and one persona that says, I want to do the same thing that Ethereum and others have done for 5 to 6 years on end. And we want to enable both these people to have like first class experiences, right? So on the EVM side, really tokens they're just balances within a smart contract. That's really all they are, right? And so there aren't, unless the developer adds them, restrictions that say the ledger for your account can't have these tokens, which is where you get airdrops from. It means I can just send tokens within that contract that relate to your balance. There's no real permissions innately within it. And if you compare that to Hedera, where we say that, okay, tokens are these native entities and they're complex and they have characteristics about them. And part of that characteristic is account sovereignty, right? So we want anything that has to do with your account to be in your permission. Anything that changes on your account should have been signed off by you. So if you don't want to have a token associated with your balance on Hedera, you don't have to. Innately and by default, you won't. So this is where a token association comes in and says that, hey, there's a token out there. I like it. I want to hold this balance. I go and associate with it first. And from then on, you can transact with it. And so the HIP 904 frictionless airdrops, it really is an effort for us to be able to support both these personas. We want to be able to maintain that account sovereignty and allow people who, have really, core scenarios, maybe in the finance space, where it's really important to make sure that exactly what's going on, what changes are being made. But you also want to allow, whether it's retail scenarios where certain tokens on the EVM want to be transacted, or even native tokens, in a fashion that's a bit more open. So what we're doing here is we're kind of splitting it up in what we call max or I'd say automatic associations. There's a property on the account that allows you to define and say, hey, I'm open to accepting all tokens or no tokens. And by choosing one of these pathways, you can essentially support airdrops. So by default, if you create an account on Hedera, it's the former, right? It's the default, it's the restricted, it's the you have to associate with a token before. But if you are coming through, let's say the EVM side, and you automatically create that account that doesn't have the perception of Hedera level qualities, you'll go the EVM route that says that, you're willing to accept airdrops, meaning, Viv or Jim, you could send me a token and it would work just as you would expect on other EVM networks. We also made some other improvements that I won't go too deep into, but we did some balancing out of who pays for that association. And then one extra thing that we also added is this concept of token rejection, right? It's really important that I, as a user, again, for that account sovereignty reason, I should be able to get rid of tokens in my account if I feel the need to. Because Hedera also has these properties around what we would call custom fees. Custom fees are another initiative to enable, token makers to be able to sort of track these fees, that as you send them, whether it's royalties, that token owner could, get a percentage of that. But sometimes these can be used maliciously in the fact that I could send you a token and I could put a really, high custom fee on it. And then effectively you wouldn't want to get rid of that token, or you couldn't afford to get rid of that token even if you wanted to. So token rejection is another aspect within this HIP that will allow you to get rid of any token, regardless of how you acquired it, whether you manually went and associated or it was automatically associated for you. So if you had a spam token that came in, you could send that back to the treasury. You wouldn't have to pay the custom fees. You just pay the minimal transaction fee to actually submit it to the network. And that really provides a really safe pathway for users to continue to maintain their accounts. So in a nutshell, that was it. But actually, there's one more. I forgot. A big part about the airdrop is also the account that wants to maintain their sovereignty can still do so, but accept airdrops later on. So this means that if I have my account that's somewhat locked down and it's important to me to see every token that comes in, I can still be on the receiving end of an attempted airdrop. So in this call, Viv, you could try and airdrop me a token. It stays in your balance. It doesn't come to mine, but the network, in a sense, it registers the fact that you intended to send that token to me. I then, as a user, have the opportunity to go and claim that airdrop that you sent to me. I don't have to, but I do have the opportunity. And so in this way, again, I can maintain my account sovereignty as to what comes in, but you as an airdropper have a smooth experience of being able to submit a transaction that would attempt to airdrop a token to me, if not allow me the opportunity in follow-up to be able to claim that token. And it's sort of akin to what some other ledgers are doing when they find out that maybe you have a governance token for a network or for a project, and they say, hey, come over, do this step, and then I'll mint this token for you. It's sort of similar to that in this regard. So I could airdrop this token, it doesn't go through immediately to your balance, but then you could take a step later to go claim it at your leisure.
So super valuable content there from Nana about the airdrops. But I think it's also important to highlight it from, Dr. Lehman Baird's mouth himself as to why they sort of stuck with this token association feature at the very beginning. So I'll just read it off. So Lehman wrote on Twitter, he said, "When we designed the Hedera network, we wanted to do things differently for Web3. The issue of receiving unwanted tokens is an unfortunate yet expected result of the lack of inflow controls for wallets and accounts on most public blockchains. For tokenization to reach its true potential, users must have the ability to control the limits of how they want to interact with their respective network. That's why we implemented token associations and receiver signature capabilities on Hedera, providing secure and flexible safeguards against unwanted spam and crypto dusting attacks for both enterprises and individuals alike." Of course, he hits the nail on the head right there, right? And I think this again shows how visionary Lehman is, that he thought of this, 4 years ago or so, before any of the institutions were showing this kind of interest in tokenization. When he came up with the Hedera token service with the rest of the team, these kind of things he really understood far before the rest of the industry, right? I haven't got any other account that I use that has this feature. I play about on the other networks like Solana and Avalanche and so on and so forth, but none of them have this kind of ground up approach of really, really understanding exactly what enterprises and institutions need to enter this kind of space. A, not even at scale, just to test the waters, but B, at scale. And so this highlights again Lehman as a true visionary in this space.
Absolutely. No question about that. And I do want to highlight that not only do they have these additional controls as the default, but as Nana mentioned, they're going to allow it to be more seamless going forward. And while we're talking about airdrops, I want to focus on some of the airdrops that we have going on. We still have the one from Earthlings going on. They have 2 more drops and the biggest drops coming up. All you have to do is associate these 3 assets to participate in that. We have the one from Grelf. That's going to be just next week on the 2nd. So all you have to do is associate Grelf and you'll be eligible for that one. And then the last one I want to highlight is there was just a DAO vote done by the Mouth, and we've covered them a fair amount in recent weeks. They just passed it. They are also going to do an HBAR weighted airdrops. We don't have all the details on that. We think we're going to get them next week, but from what I've heard, it's going to be a pretty substantial drop. So I'm looking forward to that one as well. All right, we're going to shift gears here a little bit. We're going to get into DePIN, or decentralized physical infrastructure, and that's around Neuron. Of course, we've talked a lot about Neuron in the past. They are focused on aerial drones initially, but they actually had an airport deploy one of their sensors, and I can't wait until the rest of the community can participate in that and put out their own sensors and get incentivized through the Neuron token. So that was really good to see. All right, so again, we're gonna move on to a new subject here. We're gonna get it a little bit into DeFi. I want to talk about the Messari report. I have a couple little thoughts around what we saw there, but did you have any thoughts, Zep, on what we saw come out around the Messari report that was focused specifically on Hedera DeFi?
So what I think is super important about these kind of reports is that Messari is one of the most read, industry-wide reports that both VC, but developers, teams, retail alike really look for to see which ecosystems have or show potential. And so for them to come out with this report, they run mainnet, of course, one of the big conferences, but to come out saying that Hedera TVL is up 146 to 157 million year to date, and that, partially that is not just because of the token increasing, but because of new inflows into the ecosystem, is really, really important for them to be showcasing that. Alongside that, they spotlighted that USDC stablecoin liquidity is up, liquid staking is also up, and the launch of SaucerSwap V2 has helped achieve a lot of this growth. And of course, other teams like HBAR Suite are also contributors to that. So great for them, I think, or great for us rather, to have this a real big research team showcasing the potential, but also what we've come to so far this year with SaucerSwap in particular.
Yeah, I will say you mentioned H Suite, but they weren't included in the numbers that were put out by Messari. So you can add, it's not huge. Of course, the 800-pound gorilla is SaucerSwap with well over 100 million in TVL. But, we have 5.5 million from H Suite as well, and they're continuing to iterate. So I'm excited to see what we see come out of that team. We also have new teams that are entering. We have Sirio and we have Bonzo Finance. They're both going to be lending platforms on Hedera, and we had a Twitter space this past week on that. We also had in that space Ichi Foundation, who is doing some really interesting stuff with SaucerSwap around liquidity provision. So again, we are continuing to progress within our DeFi ecosystem and bringing new features and just growing the space as a whole. All right, so last week we did mention that Australia had a hackathon around Hedera, and they had some of their leading universities, and Hedera is doing something with a leading university here in the United States. Can you give us some more information on that?
Yeah, so, we saw Dr. Lehman Baer do his Harvard blockchain conference talk years ago, right? And that really propelled him into, the limelight for our community and other people as well. And that was back in 2017. But this year, Hedera will be sponsoring the Harvard blockchain conference in 2024. And so I think it's just great to see that, we do maintain those ties with Harvard, and that we will be there, having that brand recognition, having new university students, some of the most intelligent in the world, seeing that Hedera is, supporting the society within Harvard and enabling those channels to sort of open for them to enter the ecosystem.
Absolutely. All right. So the next thing we're going to get into is around Hedera, the WEF, and the Metaverse ID report. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so Hedera has had contribution or features in a few of the WEF papers now. The Hedera Guardian was featured in how we could scale climate finance. Brett was quoted again in the WEF Digital Identity white paper. And then here again, we have contributions from Neil Meaney and Brett McDowell once again in the Metaverse Identity sort of research report they've put out there. So these are, of course, just contributions. We don't know where Hedera slots into this in terms of development, but we do know that the WEF has some of the biggest connections in the world with different organizations, with different figures, And so to have our team contributing to that, rubbing shoulders with some of these big organizations around this kind of metaverse, Web3, digital identity solutions, that's net positive. If we can position ourselves as one of the leading sort of networks for things like digital identity, for like metaverse through these contributions, then that's only going to bode well for us in the long term.
Yeah, completely agree. And right before we get into the network analysis, I want to cover some more stuff from the Foundry. Again, the Foundry is a place where builders on Hedera come together and they support each other, but they also do this town hall. They've been doing them every 3 weeks or so, and every single one of them is gold. There's so many good things that come out of it. Of course, that discussion that we highlighted from Nana just a little while ago on airdrops was really important, but I also wanted to cover some things that Richard covered on just the general rigor and testing that Hedera goes through and a couple other topics. So let's check that out.
First priority is a smooth and well-functioning network. Every number that we publish is honest to goodness, like what we can do. We're honest about the work that we do. We have a lot of tests, a lot of things like that in order to try to make sure that we can actually hit all those numbers that we publish. So making sure that the network is safe and secure is absolutely always the top priority. And any other priority we have will get bumped for that one. Outside of that, the next priority is feedback from the community. So we want the experience for the people who are building. I mean, if you looked out 2 levels, the experience that we want for end users using our network is that we have the best user experience. In order for that to happen, we have to provide all the tools and capabilities to the builders so that they can give users the best user experience. And in order for that to happen, we have to get a good dialogue and feedback so that we know what features to add. Because I've been in the platform business a long time. I was on the Java team. We developed a platform that obviously is used by, many, many, many millions of people and billions of lines of code. And there's 2 things that we really learned from that experience. The first one is that backwards compatibility is absolutely important. We can't break people. And the second thing is that as a platform provider, you always live in a bubble. You do your best to try to understand what other people need, but you always live in a bubble. So the things that we try to focus on is like, what are people telling us? What are the pain points they're telling us? And sometimes they tell us a pain point and we go, I don't understand. How can that be a problem? And that's actually a very interesting, like when that happens, that's the most interesting thing. Because if somebody says, hey, this is a problem, and you say, how can that possibly be a problem? It means that there's something that we don't understand and something that we need to understand better. And when we understand it, we can provide a better experience. So I think airdrops is a good example of one of those where, I personally have always been on the end of the spectrum that said, I don't want anybody's dirty airdrops, just leave me out of this. I want to have a clean account. But we've heard like loud and clear from people that are saying, dude, we absolutely need airdrops for a whole bunch of different use cases. And so that, was something that we had to wrestle with. And so an example of that is like the airdrop HIP that we produced. It was the result of, I don't know, Nana, it's probably at least 20, 25 hours of discussion to try to work it down to something that we felt would be a good compromise between the 2 extreme positions. So I think like airdrop HIP is a good example of something that goes onto that roadmap. And when we do performance tests, we have a couple different ones. We do NFT transfers, crypto transfers, smart contract calls, a mixture of all 3 different types, consensus service, a mixture of consensus service with the other types and so forth. There's a variety of different combinations that we run. And we run those every single release. And we also have what we call the Oleg tests because it was written by Oleg Nazarov, who's on our team. And he's I don't know, he might be up to 30 years now as a performance engineer. He was at Sun Microsystems back in the day and has a lot of experience as a performance engineer. And his tests are absolutely brutal. It's like, in the NFT transfer test, we mint a very large number of accounts and NFTs. And it just keeps track of the trading of those things back and forth between all the different members. And, you guys have known this for a long time. The numbers that we have as our throttle are sort of a safe level. We actually test way the heck above that. So give you an example. In these performance tests, we see 200 million associations, whereas our actual limit in mainnet today is 15 million. Now you'd say, well, why can't you make it bigger? We can. We're just very careful to make sure that we're not going to mess up mainnet no matter what. Which is why our network can crank out 1 billion new transactions every 7 days or every 10 days. And I don't even think about it at night. It doesn't even come into our mind because we have tested this thing to the T. We also do chaos testing where we run at max throughput and then we just start killing nodes. And then those nodes reconnect. So for those who aren't familiar with that terminology, basically what happens is every single node in the network has to be up to speed with every other node in the network because every single node has to process every transaction, get its final result, share the final result with everybody else and say, yep, we all agree we processed that transaction correctly. Well, if a node goes offline for even 3 minutes and you're doing 10K TPS, there's a whole lot of transactions they missed out on. So what they do is there's this process called reconnect where a node will sync up with another node and get everything that it missed in those 3 minutes, and then it'll pick up and start executing again. So we have nodes that go through the reconnect process, and we kill multiple nodes at a time, making sure that it stays above the 1/3 threshold in order to verify that we can recover and everything is good. And it's one thing to say that you can process 10K TPS. It's another thing to say that you're processing 10K TPS with reconnect. So if you just did the back of the envelope math on that, and let's say that you did 10,000 token transfers per second, and your node was offline even for 30 seconds, that's like, well, I don't know, 10,000 times 30 seconds. That's 300,000 different modifications that have happened in that time period. And you have to synchronize all that and catch up. So which means that all the nodes need spare capacity. So we go through all of that. We do a longevity testing, which by default is a 7-day process. And in longevity testing, we do the chaos and the heavy load for 7 days straight. And if the nodes die or one of the nodes computes something incorrectly, then that becomes like a P0. We go figure out what happened. We get a bug fix. We put it in. So yeah, it's a pretty rigorous testing strategy.
All right, so I do want to suggest everybody go check that entire town hall that was put out by the Foundry. It was excellent, really well done. And with that, we'll get into some network analysis. So we did see a drop off in transactions this week. We had been cruising around 1,300 transactions per second, and it dropped to about 100, but came up a little bit and is running at just under 200 transactions per second. Time to consensus is still about 3.4 seconds, and we created about 72,000 accounts this past week. Looking at our top 10 fungible tokens, Wrapped HBAR, Karate Combat's Karate, and the meme coin Unlucky took the top 3 spots, followed by Sauce, Dovu, and USDC. Next up is the energy trade token Islas Canarias, and the bridged version of USDC, rounded out by Galaxy. Moving down to NFTs, sub 100K took the top spot, followed by the road code access card, then Saucer Swap's liquidity provider token. Next up, we have the mobile game Not a Slime World, and you mentioned that their fungible token has been seeing really good volume over there in Asia. The Doctor Who Worlds Apart NFT is moving up the rankings as well. We also have the INO token from Hashpack, the Times Zero, and the Hedera naming service making it into the top 10. And in the final spot, we have Lithos. We have one of the Lithos Rant CPU tokens. And that will go from that into some DeFi. The total value locked in the Hedera DeFi ecosystem, not including liquid staking, stands at $125 million. Saucer Swap makes up $123 million of that, but we get an additional $5 million out of H Suite that's not yet included in DeFi Llama. With Saucer Swap switching over to showing the broad ranges of possible returns under V2 pools, I still haven't nailed down how to cover yields on that platform, but I'll work on it. Moving over to the HBAR and crypto markets, Bitcoin and HBAR have had decent weeks, both being up about 10%. At the time of recording, HBAR is sitting between 11.5 and 11.6 cents. We had an interesting spike midweek where HBAR shot up to over 13 cents. Hard to know if this is someone trying to manipulate the market or if it was just a big purchase that was arbitraged away. Either way, now that we've dropped below 12, that mark might offer some weak resistance. It looks like there is some support between 11.1 and 11.2 cents, and of course we have that strong support down at 10. All right, Zeb, that's pretty much all we have. Is there anything else you'd like to pass on?
Yeah, I think the highlight for me this week is the gaming ecosystem on Hedera. that stretches from, GameFi to play to earn in APAC all the way to AAA with, the likes of BBC Studios, EA and beyond. I think developing that robust ecosystem, which is, one of the core narratives that people believe will take Web3 mainstream, I think having our own piece of that pie is very important, and knowing that we have the likes of Neo Tokyo, one of the biggest Web3 industry cohorts, also recognizing that is super, super valuable. And I really hope to see that, ecosystem continue to grow, their tokens to come to market and for them to really get some momentum behind them. So for me, the highlight there was seeing that ecosystem in full view. And I'm looking forward to a lot of those token launches that are coming up.
And I guess, Zeb, the thing that I want to highlight is how Hedera is kind of ahead of its time in how it thinks about things. We highlighted what Lehman said, and we highlighted how they control airdrops, which would have solved the problems of BlackRock saw this past week with their Ethereum fund. Other things like the DTCC could be absolutely huge. And Hedera has that rigor in place. It has the testing in place, which ensures that Hedera is as safe as possible, even though we know that all of these things are moving in the directions of DLTs. All DLTs are not created equal. Next week, just to cover, hopefully we're going to get Rob back for some shark bites. We're also going to be doing a space on the medical industry and Hedera. So we're going to get Jim Nasser on for that, as well as we might get some of the Hedera council members involved in that. And hopefully I'll be able to get some more participants in the Hedera ecosystem to do some interviews. With that all out of the way, we'll see you next week.